have any assessment to offer on military action.
As part of the accord, would Israel have to notify you that it was going to retaliate?
Again, on the specific military pieces, I will let colleagues at the Pentagon speak to the ins and outs of that. Michelle, go ahead.
Thank you. Did you pressure Israel yesterday not to strike Beirut, as the Israelis have said?
Michelle, I'm not going to speak to private diplomatic conversations. Our perspective continues to be that all parties need to do everything possible to abide by the ceasefire. We'll continue to receive and assess reports of alleged violations of the ceasefire through the monitoring and implementation mechanism, and we are committed to helping the parties implement the ceasefire, as I said, through this robust monitoring mechanism that we hope will address such violations.
Is the U.S. Preparing to provide military aid to the Lebanese armed forces to implement the agreement?
I don't have any specific announcements to preview, Michelle, beyond just saying that the United States, of course, has been one of the largest supporters of the LAF over many, many years, but I don't have any specific announcement to preview or share.
On Syria, if you don't mind. Yesterday, Matt said that the U.S. Didn't support the opposition in their military movement. Today, the SDF, who are supported by the U.S., is expanding its influence in Deir ez-Zor province and expanding their territories too. Is the U.S. providing any support to them?
Michelle, what the events of the past 48 to 72 hours underscore is that this conflict can only end once and for all through what we view as a political settlement that's consistent with UN Security Council Resolution 2254. We think it's time to reinvigorate that political process, and we think that the only path forward is a UN-facilitated one. And certainly, our view is that certainly no country should be taking advantage of this particular incident, and really we are engaging with partners and allies with a consistent message, is that any who sort of have power or who have influence over some of these actors is do everything that we can to continue to stress de-escalation.
But the SDF, who are supported by the U.S., are expanding their territories, and they are part of the military action in northeastern Syria today.
So again, our viewpoint continues to be that the only solution here is one that is Syrian-led, Syrian-inclusive, and reflective of the will of the Syrian people, and that would be one that is in line with UN Security Council Resolution 2254.
And finally, on Iraq, do you have any updates on the waiver on Iraq to import energy from Iran?
Sure. On November 7th, the department did renew Iraq's electricity waiver for the 23rd time since 2018. It was done so for an additional 120 days. We remain committed to reducing Iran's malign influence in the region. Our viewpoint is that a stable, sovereign, and secure Iraq is critical to these efforts. Since 2018, as you know, this started in the previous administration, the State Department has permitted Iraq to purchase Iranian electricity while Iraq continues to develop its own domestic generation capacity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Have you seen any progress from the Iraqi government to step up towards energy independence from Iran? Because there are reports that even Iran get $1 billion a year from Iraq since Prime Minister Soudani took office in 2022.
I think I've spoken a little bit about this before, DR, and I don't have any updated assessment to offer beyond we have seen some progress and steps in the right direction by the Iraqi government as it relates to their own sovereign domestic energy production. That continues to be the case. I don't have a different assessment to offer today.
Two more questions on Syria.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Today, the Iraqi Prime Minister Office issued a statement, and they said that Iraq is not stand and monitoring the situation in Syria, but they will exert all efforts to preserve the security in Syria and in Iraq. How do you see this statement from Iraqi Prime Minister?
So I'm not going to draw any particular conclusions from that statement, DR. What we are telling partners in the region, what we continue to echo is that from our viewpoint, from the United States viewpoint, the only solution is a UN-led one that is consistent with UN Security Council Resolution 2254. I expect that there's actually going to be a UN Security Council resolution on this later today, and we want every country doing everything they can in their power to de-escalate. We don't want to see tensions escalate at such a fraught time.
And lastly, on humanitarian situation in Syria. So far, there are about 200,000 Kurds, Christians, and other people, minority, have displaced. And a part of them, they went to the SDF areas, and which you are your partner. And I've learned that the SDF and Syrian Autonomous Administration have reached out to you, and they are seeking help to addressing the humanitarian situation in Syria. Are you offering any support in this regard?
So look, offering appropriate humanitarian assistance is of course vital, and we think that is critically important. We have for many years now been a important and a robust provider of humanitarian aid to those impacted regions. I don't have any specific announcement to offer as it relates to today, but we are just continuing to monitor the situation, and we'll take appropriate steps if we need to. Willie, go ahead.
Thanks, Vedant.
Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned that under the ceasefire, Israel retains a right to defend itself. I mean, does that same right transfer to the Lebanese state? I say this because Israel's new defense minister today said that if it fails to deter Hezbollah from attacking it, the Lebanese government will not be immune from attacks in the future.
So I think you're asking me to again speak to a hypothetical, which I'm just not going to engage on.
Is there something in the ceasefire that says, if attacked, the Lebanese state has the right to defend itself?
So, at the crux of this, this long conversation that we've been having as it relates to northern Israel and southern Lebanon has been UN Security Council Resolution 1701. And at the center of that is this notion that Hezbollah will withdraw to north of the Litani River, and that likewise Israel will return to south of the Blue Line back to Israel. But I think to just pressure test your question a little bit, I don't think that there is a desire from Israel to invade or attack the Lebanese people. What we were talking about is specific acts or incidents of self-defense. Again, I'm not going to...
It's still killed 12 Lebanese.
Certainly I'm not trying to minimize the impact on Lebanese civilians, but I just don't have an assessment to offer on some of these specific incidents beyond just saying that as it relates to the ceasefire, there is a mechanism in place to address violations. And ultimately, at the crux of this, Israel, if it is threatened or if its security is violated by Hezbollah, by a terrorist group, they certainly have the right to their self-defense.
But it's a chicken and the egg. Does Lebanon then not retain that same right? If they are... Okay. Let's say Israel is the aggressor.
Again, we are going down a slippery slope of hypotheticals.
It's not that hypothetical.
It is a bit of a hypothetical because on one side we are talking about a terrorist group that, as part of its mission statement, has the destruction of Israel stamped at the center of that. And on the other side, you have Israel, a sovereign democratic state.
That has invaded it is Lebanon three times.
As part of what we are talking about and part of this ceasefire is for Israel at the crux of 1701 is to withdraw to south of the Blue Line. I think these situations are not totally comparable, but I really appreciate you trying. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mel.
Yeah.
Very quickly on Secretary's engagement on Ukraine, and then I have South Caucasus to cover.
Sure.
You guys signed a MOU today with Ukrainian Foreign Minister, which will provide 825 million in energy assistance for Ukraine. Can you be clear in what form it's going to be delivered and where is it coming from? Is it part of the FAA or USAID budget? I'm asking because Ukrainian side is asking for providing more additional air defense systems to secure the energy sites rather than just assistance for dealing with the results of Russian attacks.
So in terms of the budgetary line item, Alex, I don't have a specific steer for you, but of course what I would say is that this is another long step of ours in doing what we can to make sure that Ukraine can continue to stand on its own 2 feet. Ultimately, the end goal here, Alex, and you've heard the Secretary talk a lot about this, is making sure that Ukraine can stand on its own militarily, economically, and it can continue to grow and be part of these Euro-Atlantic institutions. But I'm happy to check specifically if we have some specifics on the budgetary information on
Thank you so
on
much.
that.
In terms of delivering
Yeah.
that, is there
Sure.
any sense on your end that there's time ticking here?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The time ticking here. You have less time to deliver 825 million on energy assistance.
We continue to work around the clock to do everything we can to find ways in which we can continue to support Ukraine. As you probably saw, Alex, that as part of the surge in the security assistance that the president announced in late September, the U.S. is providing another significant package of urgently needed weapons and equipment to our Ukrainian partners as they continue to defend against Russia. This additional assistance is being provided under Presidential Drawdown Authority, and it's valued at approximately $725 million. It includes a whole litany of systems and capabilities that we think will continue to help Ukraine defend itself.
Thank you. Moving to the South Caucasus,
Yeah.
Azerbaijan arrested a leading human rights defender, I should say one of the last remaining defenders, Rifat Safarov, today. And they report that he was supposed to be Secretary's Human Rights Defenders Awardee next week. So do you have any reaction to this arrest?
We're deeply concerned by reports that human rights defender Rifat Safarov has been detained in Azerbaijan. We're closely monitoring this case. It's imperative that human rights defenders everywhere are able to conduct their work without hindrance and free and fear from retribution. And we continue to urge Azerbaijan to release all of those unjustly detained and to cease its crackdown on civil society, including human rights defenders and journalists.
Any sense on your end that without a failure to secure political prisoners released during the COP, before that and after that, has emboldened the regime?
So I'm just not going to speculate on the decision-making here or what may or may not have caused this, Alex. What I will just echo is that we're urging Azerbaijan to release all those unjustly detained and cease its crackdown on civil society, including human rights defenders and journalists.
Thank you. Finally, Georgia, I want to get your reaction to the brutal attacks on the protesters during the past 24 hours. Before that, how do they handling this?
Well, Alex, we condemn the excessive use of force by police against Georgian protesters seeking to exercise their rights to freedom of peaceful assembly and expression, including their ability to peacefully protest. The U.S. is deeply concerned by reports of the detention and assault of journalists, and recognizing that a free press, we believe, is a cornerstone of a democratic system. We're continuing to call on all sides to ensure protests remain peaceful, and we are urging the Georgian government to strictly respect the rule of law, human rights, and fundamental freedoms.
But when you say all sides, don't you...
I'm gonna work the room a little bit, Alex. You've gotten three. Go ahead.
When is the right time for you to impose the sanctions on the person who has organized this massive violence in Georgia? And I'm speaking about the founder of the Georgian Dream Party.
So, look, I'm not going to preview or speculate on any actions the U.S. may or may not take. What I can say, what we're focused on right now, is engaging with the Georgian government and emphasizing to them the strong responsibility they have to respect the rule of law, respect human rights, and respect fundamental freedoms, which we continue to believe are the foundation of Georgia's own Euro-Atlantic aspirations. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. In Bangladesh, British MPs Barry Gardner and President Patel released concerned in the UK Parliament over violence against Hindus in Bangladesh, highlighting over 2,000 violent incidents and calling for urgent government discussion with Bangladeshi authorities to ensure protection, law and order, and freedom of religion for minority communities. Are there any plan to address this concern through diplomatic and policy measurement from U.S.?
So we are consistent with every government in which we have a relationship with. We are clear that there needs to be the respect of fundamental freedoms. There needs to be respect of religious freedom and basic human rights. Any kind of protests should be and need to be peaceful, and that any kind of crackdown, not even crackdown, that governments need to respect the rule of law. They need to respect basic human rights as part of that, and that's something we'll continue to emphasize.
And definitely, you already know that Chinmoy Das Brahmachari, the leader of ISKCON in Bangladesh, also Tulsi Gabbard, proposed director of U.S. National Intelligence, is the member of ISKCON. The Chinmoy Das is illegally arrested, put it in the jail, and no lawyer in Bangladesh willing to stand for Chinmoy Krishna Das because his lawyer was beaten and sent to the hospital. Will you take any action on that?
So I don't have the details surrounding that case, but again, we continue to stress and emphasize that even those who are in detention need to be afforded appropriate representation and need to be treated with basic fundamental freedoms and human rights.
And finally,
in the back. Go ahead. Yeah,
thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. A couple questions on Gaza. Number one, reports are circulating that Hamas and Fatah are closing in on an agreement to select a committee of supposedly politically independent technocrats to administer Gaza. Number one, has the U.S. been coordinating with Ramallah on that process? Does it take a position on this process, and was it discussed between Secretary Blinken and Minister Dermer yesterday?
So I don't have any further readouts or perspective to offer from the Secretary's engagement beyond that. I've seen the reporting as it relates to this announcement, but don't have anything to offer beyond just saying, obviously for the United States, Hamas continuing to play a role in any kind of governance form in Gaza would certainly be deeply troubling.
So the U.S. has not been looped into this?
I just don't have any diplomatic conversations to read out.
One other question on humanitarian aid.
Yeah.
The UN has put the onus on Israel to clamp down on the looting that's been happening with the trucks going into Gaza. Meanwhile, the UN also says that it cannot allow Israel to escort those trucks because it's one of the warring parties, which is a complete catch-22. How, in the U.S.'s opinion, should Israel go about trying to stamp out the looting of the humanitarian trucks? And again, I guess you already answered the question, but has the U.S. been engaged with Israel in guidance and support in trying to find a solution?
So we've been engaged on this issue, not just with Israel, but other important regional partners as well, including, of course, the United Nations. It is a serious area of concern, and it's an area of concern where we continue to want to see more happen and more diligence given, not just, of course, from Israel's perspective, but also from the United Nations as well.
Can the U.S. provide a solution to it?
This is something we're continuing to engage on with partners. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.